Hey everyone, welcome back to the React Redux intro series on Velocity 360. For the complete series tutorial, check out our website, velocity360.io. This is part 2 of the tutorial where we're going to make a site that queries the Foursquare API and then returns a list of venues based on a zip code that the user inputted, as well as a category. So the user will be able to select what kind of venue, so food, clothing store, things like that. So let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. So in video 1, we got the browser rendering the first component. So what we want to do here right now is we want to establish how the site, the main UI is going to look. This is probably going to be only a one-page site for now. So we want to have a nav bar across the top where the user will have the ability to enter the zip code. So we're going to need a text field in the nav bar, as well as a drop-down menu showing the categories we can select. And then the main body will show the actual results. And every time we change the contents in the nav bar and press a button saying search, the main body will show the results of that search. So it's going to be a pretty simple UI, but once we have that understood, we can make some decisions about how to set up the React components. So let's go ahead and open up the project. And this is where we left off. So what we want to do is we want to develop our components with the UI that we had in mind, so that we can mentally figure out, situate what we're working on in terms of the actual site. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Okay, so we're about to build more components. So what we want to do is create another directory to store all the components, and that will be called components. And then we want to cd into that, and then we want to set up the two main components that we discussed. So let's go with nav first, and then results for the search results. So we want to create a nav component. Just create an index here as well. Okay, so here are the two things we just created. So let's set up the nav component. And I always start my components quite simple, literally this simple, so that there's very little opportunity to mess up. Okay, and then the reason we created an index is so that we can import multiple components, or more accurately export multiple components. Okay, looks good. So now let's render this nav component inside the app component, the original app component. You may notice that on the nav component we did something a little bit different. We wrote export default instead of the React DOM code we had here. That's because we're not going to render the nav component inside directly in the DOM. The only component that does that is the app.js. Everything else will be imported into the app.js through other components. So what we want to do here is we want to import the nav from the components directory, and then we want to render that right here. Okay. and then we go back to our root level directory and then run webpack again. Because remember, nothing matters until you compile the code. So right now it's still the old code is still there until we see this. And now the new code is there. And if we reload the page, we now see the nav component. So we're definitely on our way now. We can now render components inside of other components, or nesting components. That's exactly what we're trying to do. So that's good to go. So let's go ahead and set up the other one as well. I opened a new tab, by the way. So we have the tab here as well as the Webpack tab. Notice how I have Webpack-W. That means Webpack doesn't stop running. It keeps going. And every time we make a change to the files, Webpack is watching it, hence the W. So we can just leave it running here and do some more work over here. So let's go ahead and do that. So go to your source directory and then the components. And let's create let's call it Venues. And this component will be responsible for rendering the list of results from the Foursquare search. So same thing. We want to start very simple. And just like the nav component, we want to export it so that we can nest it into other components. And then let's go back here and export it in the index. Okay, and then swing back over to your app.js and grab the venues as well. And then let's put that right here. Okay. So now if you left your Webpack running, you'll see that it's been doing more builds. That's because we're making changes. So the more we make changes, the more this build will pile up, which means we don't have to run it anymore. We can just reload the index.html. And here we see everything we need to see. So that worked. Everything looks good. And now we're ready to get our components doing some real business logic. So in the next video, what we're going to do is configure this a little bit more visually. We're going to have an input field here, as well as a drop-down select menu, and a button that says Go or Search. And then that will actually trigger the search to Foursquare, and then render the results in here. So stay tuned for that. Thanks.